Welcome back to the Inland Empire Workers' Compensation Lawyer live stream podcast, broadcasting live every Sunday at 3 p.m., discussing a new topic in workers' compensation law and employment rights. My name is Attorney Alexander Napolin. I'm joined by Attorney George Abuado for episode number 17 on injured workers' rights after multiple dates of injury. So if you're an injured worker who's experienced multiple injuries over a period of time, you have different rights, potentially, than someone who's only had one date of injury. This short 10-minute discussion that George and I have put together is going to help you understand what your rights are if you've had multiple dates of injury at work. But remember, it's general information only and not legal advice. If you need legal advice, you need to give the specific facts and circumstances of your claim to the lawyer. The lawyer gives you specific feedback. If you need legal advice, you need to dial our injury helpline at 844-984-8414, and George and I will give you a free and confidential case evaluation. So, if you've been injured at work on multiple dates, what do you need to know?
Well, first of all, we have to discuss what type of injury it is, right? So we do have a great video on that, Alex. Our viewers need to go back and look at types of injuries so you can really know what types of injuries are covered within a workers' compensation claim. So as you know, if you've seen the videos, we have a specific injury or a cumulative trauma that can also be an injury. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that you can have multiple dates of injury and multiple claims at the same time. So the way I've ran across this type of situation is maybe the injured worker had, let's say, a slip and fall. They didn't want to report it because they're scared, once again, about getting in trouble or getting fired. But now they have a second fall and it's big. They couldn't hide it. It's on camera. The manager found out. They gave them the paperwork to fill out, and now they're going to go get treatment for that second injury. Well, the first injury happened maybe to the left ankle. Second injury was a slip and fall that was even worse, and it hurt the back. Now you have an open claim for the second injury. What happens to the first injury? You don't want to forget that. So you tell your manager, listen, I had a slip and fall. I didn't report it at the time, but it's getting worse for my ankle. I want to also have that open. Meanwhile, my injury to the back is open as well. So now you got, if you're following me, you got an injury that first happened to your left ankle that you didn't report, but now you have. You have a second injury to your back for the second slip and fall. Those are two specific injuries. But what if you've been in the job for, let's say, 15 years? And because of the repetitive work you do, you've been feeling an awful pain in your shoulders and in your neck. So now you have an injury to your left ankle, first accident that happened, injury to your back because of the second slip and fall. If you're having injury to your shoulders and neck because of your job, this is also the perfect time to put in a third injury, which is a cumulative trauma, to address those body parts as well. So now if you're counting, you have 3 separate injuries, 3 separate dates of injury that can all be treated at the same time. It might be with separate doctors, with different doctors. It might be at separate locations, but you are eligible. You have the right to treatment for those 3 injuries, and they might be treated differently by the different doctors.
Maybe they're injuries that you reported before, or maybe you've already reported the injury, or maybe it's a cumulative trauma, and now the doctor's saying, ooh, you have some degenerative changes in your back from this fall.
Right.
Well, maybe you have what we call a cumulative trauma from working for those 15 years. So if you think you have more injuries that you want to bring up other than the one that's right in front of you for other dates, you have that right. You should seek attorney representation.
Correct. Now we're talking about, let's be specific here. We're talking about separate injuries because, as you know, Alex, we had a video and we discussed maybe injuries that come about because of the first injury. That's something a little bit different. Maybe you, once again, let's go with that same example. You slipped and you hurt your back, and because you can't walk correctly, or because now your gait is different, which is the way you walk is different. Now your hips are starting to hurt, or that is because of the first injury, but that is not a new injury. Correct, Alex?
That's a secondary injury to
Correct.
The first injury, and it could happen with other injuries as well.
Right, and it's a compensable consequence. So it is compensable, and it's a consequence of your first injury, but it's not a second entire new injury. And once again, that was a mouthful, what I just explained. If for some reason you did not grasp that concept, send us a message. If for some reason that's something that you think that sounds like it might have happened to me, or it's what's going on with me right now, but I'm not sure. Send us a message. We'll clear up that subject, that topic. Glad to help out. Now, another thing that goes along with separate injuries is we discussed a separate treatment by primary treating physicians, but also, as we discussed in our previous videos, you are entitled to a neutral doctor, a panel qualified medical examiner, QME, also known as a QME. And sometimes when you have different injuries, it might be in your best interest to request separate neutral doctors. So to simplify this, if you have an injury where you slipped and fell, and you have an injury to different body parts where you have a cumulative trauma, you are entitled to request a different neutral doctor to evaluate you for each injury. Now, there's some pros and cons to doing that. What do you recommend in that case, Alex? What do you think they should do?
Well, if you have a good lawyer and the lawyer knows that you got a good doctor evaluating the injury, then you could potentially just use the same doctor for both. But if you have two injuries and they're in different specialties, you'll definitely need two different QMEs, because maybe you have an internal injury, you have an orthopedic injury, you might need two different QMEs. Right. If you get a bad QME on one, or someone who's just not very friendly to injured workers, you might choose to push that second QME, even if it's an ortho QME.
Agreed. So the way QMEs are chosen, we discussed that way. They're pretty much at random, and then you do the best at the end when you do get that panel to pick the best possible choice, but you don't get to pick the exact QME. It's done by a process of elimination. So the first QME, if it's one that, like Alex said, is not very friendly to injured workers, maybe his reports don't usually help out the injured worker. If you're stuck with that QME for the first one, you definitely want to request a second panel for that second date of injury for the second set of body parts. You don't want to have the same QME, a QME that you already know is horrible. You're going to have to already argue against that QME when you get that report. You already know you're going to argue against them. So might as well try to get a better QME, try to request that panel, which is well within your rights, and the attorney's going to do that for you. Now, if flip side of the coin, if you get a really good panel for the first part, go ahead and talk to, your attorney will be doing this for you. They will explain to you that this is a really good doctor. They've gotten really good results with this doctor in the past. Maybe this doctor should examine you for both dates of injury for all body parts. Now, this is limited to the doctor's area of expertise, as Alex mentioned. Once again, these are things that you want to discuss with your trusted attorney, trusted, experienced attorney, and they will give you your best option. They will give you their recommendation, which at that point is legal advice, which, as we all know, this right here is not. It's general information.
Yeah, your lawyer is going to have to identify the need and help you obtain the QME in the secondary specialty or a second QME. As an injured worker, it's unlikely you're going to be able to navigate the system into multiple QMEs. So, and when I say QME, I mean neutral doctor. And what we were discussing before is not all of these doctors are neutral either. So if you have the opportunity to go grab two qualified medical evaluations, two neutral doctors, it's more likely that you're going to get a fair outcome.
I agree.
So if you're dealing with an issue of multiple injuries, what should you do?
Well, once again, as we always discuss, every claim is different, which is why you need to call us so we can take a look at your facts, your circumstances, and give you the best possible options for you. But I think that I would recommend, Alex, is sometimes you can even leverage the possibility of a second QME with the insurance companies through their attorney to get an agreed medical examiner. If you don't know what an agreed medical examiner is, agreed medical examiner, look at our video on that. It's very insightful, and then you'll know what an AME is, you'll know what a QME is, and this will make a lot more sense to you. But sometimes what I like to do is say, hey, listen, Mr. Attorney for the insurance companies, what we could do is have two separate QMEs, two separate bills, two separate reports to fight on, or we can get a good doctor that will take a look at all these dates of injury, that can give us a good report and provide us with everything we need for all dates of injury. And at that point, with this good doctor that we've agreed to, we're much closer to the end of your claim and much closer to getting you the right medical treatment.
You know, getting an agreed medical evaluation or medical examiner where you can pressure the insurance company where they know that you're entitled to two neutral doctors. they're not going to want to go that route because of the expense and the possibility there will be contradictions that will need to be litigated. Then your lawyer may be able to get you that agreed medical evaluation, which is something that can be very good for your claim.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good strategy.
Yeah, and once again, an experienced attorney is going to have these strategies for you in every step of your claim. They've dealt with it before, and they're going to know what is the best strategy in their handbook to use.
It's all based upon the specific facts of your case.
Always.
So these videos, as George pointed out, they're general in nature only. It's general information. It's not legal advice. For legal advice, dial the injury helpline, 844-984-8414 for a free legal consultation.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's our short guide to multiple injuries. Once again, as Alex just mentioned, your case might be different. That's when you need to call us. But as we mentioned in our last video, when do you need to see an attorney? The time is now. If you're having these questions, if you have any other questions and you're thinking, hey, this process is really tough, right now would be the time to call to get your free consultation. Come talk to us, and we're here to help.
Okay, that's the end of this episode number 17 on multiple dates of injury. If you have multiple dates of injury or you have an injury at all, give us a call, and we'll see you next week.